Death on Clare Island, Chapter 2. The corpse's pockets produced more data in the form of a driver's license. Matthew Sumner, age 25, resident of Westport, County Mayo, Ireland. Some of the crowd recognized him, explaining that he rented a room at O'Grady's guest house. "He's working on the Abbey restoration." This voice came from a teenager, tears streaking her porcelain cheeks as she stared at his pasty face. The Abbey restoration project was being funded through government grants. Cistercian monks built the Abbey in the 1500s. The restoration project hoped to rebuild and restore it. "I've often seen him with a dark-haired woman walking along the beach," said the guy who'd rotated Matthew's body. "I may have seen them even yesterday." He emphasized the word yesterday as if he couldn't believe what lay before him. At that moment, heart-wrenching sobs erupted from the teenager, her body shuddering. "Come on, Lucia," said the older man standing next to her. He grabbed her hand and turned away from the crowd. "No, I won't. No, I won't," she repeated, shaking the hand away with a ferocious strength that almost succeeded in knocking him over. "He taught me to paint." Her eyes scanned the crowd, but the elderly man grabbed her by the shoulders and pulled her away from the scene. As they withdrew, Lucia glanced back. Her eyes, tears streaming from them, were focused on the body. "Aye, it's true. He works on the project," said the Grim Reaper. "Where's Richard O'Malley?" someone else prompted. "He's heading up the dig. He'll know this chap well." Heads swiveled and people rose on tiptoe, searching for O'Malley, when a third person volunteered. "He's always here to meet the morning ferry." More head twisting before the Grim Reaper said, "Well, it doesn't look like he's here this morning." The crowd provided scraps of information that clarified Matthew's role in the project. An artist by trade, his current project included researching the drawings on the Abbey's sacristy wall. Wind, rain, and sun had bleached the original etchings to ghostly after images. The Abbey's project committee employed Matthew to recreate the drawings and other artworks belonging to the church. The island's inhabitants and visitors remained in the harbor area until the police arrived. I mentally reviewed the option of leaving the scene or lingering in the area with everyone else. "Stay here," is what the Grim Reaper had said. I decided that was the best option. Besides, my insatiable curiosity was getting the better of me. For several hours, the locals milled around outside the shops and village cottages near the shoreline. Conversations buzzed with descriptions of hippies and drug users. I moved from group to group, listening to what each had to say. Some of the locals cited the times Matthew wandered around the island's coves in the evenings. Others described him as quiet and detached, and no one paid attention to my presence. It was as if I were invisible. I got restless and broke away for a walk along the beach. That's when I noticed Lucia's return to the drama. She lurked around the edge of the only road through the village, standing off to the side, never joining in the whispering or shaking of heads. Sometimes tears rolled down her face as she turned away from the little islands of gossip to plod along the beach. A few times I glimpsed her staring up at the ragged edges of Knockmore's cliff. "That poor girlie, she must be so lonely," Mrs. Leonard remarked. She was the owner of the Mace grocery shop near the quay, and my thirst prompted me to stop there for bottled water. In fact, it was the only store on the island with a liquor license. She nodded toward Lucia. "Who is she?" I asked. "Lucia Cherisi. Have you ever heard tell of someone with a name like that? But that's her name. The family's not originally from here, you know, unlike some of us." "Oh, where is she from?" "Italy." An Italian fishing village. The three of them, mother, father, and daughter, arrived several years ago. No one knows why they chose Clare Island. They don't mix much, and neither do we. The father's a salmon fisherman. I see him rowing out to his nets all the time. She glanced out the shop's window at the narrow road that rises from the quay up Knockmore Mountain to the bed and breakfast. Being a solitary operation, I can't imagine they make too much money. She's homeschooled by the mother, and if you ask me, that's the ruin of the girl. No friends except for the dead painter. Most her age have girlfriends and boyfriends. Her voice rose as she placed the inflection on boy. From the behavior I observed earlier on the beach, I figured Lucia wouldn't have much interest in boys. Set apart by her beauty and foreignness, I got the impression she chose solitude. The shopkeeper shook her head as she handed over my change. Instead, she mopes around the Abbey ruins. If you ask me, she knows more than she's telling. Then, seeing me glance first at the expensive-looking two-row gold ring, and after that the bandage on her left hand, she added, "It's nothing, just a scrape from a fall I took handling some of the delivery bags." She pointed to her left knee. "I scraped the knee in the process, too." "Have you lived here all your life, then?" "Since I married my husband, which is nigh on 20 years. He was born on the island. 2 years since he passed. But I have a lifetime of memories here that I don't want to leave." I nodded. I didn't ask her if she'd known a woman named Maggie O'Malley. My mother would have been on the island almost 10 years before this woman arrived. The guards questioned people on the beach near where the body washed up, took names, and asked everyone to stay on the island for the next few days until after the coroner completed the inquest. "Damn," I said to myself, noting the absence of satellite reception. I'd expected wireless network coverage would be ubiquitous around the globe by now. No coverage meant no calls. I tossed the useless mobile phone I'd purchased on this side of the Atlantic for making calls in Ireland into my knapsack. Glancing over at my iPhone, I wish I'd arranged for international coverage. At least then I'd have been able to check my US emails and make calls. Totally disconnected. Can you imagine? Even with two wireless devices, one of which was the most recent version of an iPhone, that I was actually cut off from anyone beyond this island? So, during the 2 days following the discovery of Matthew's body, I passed the time rereading Troy Dunn's Lost and Found, the guide to finding family, friends, and loved ones. At least the weather was nice, golden sunshine and cloudless skies. When the news circulated that the inquest was over, everyone sighed a collective sigh of relief, anticipating the normality of day trippers and vacationers ebbing and flowing from this remote island once again. Feeling jettisoned in more ways than one, I'd be happy to get back to the mainland and reconnected to satellite coverage. Then a stranger approached me on the bed and breakfast patio where I was seated, making notes from Dunn's book. "Miss O'Brien?" "Yes," I responded as I registered the fact that this person, a woman, knew my name. "I'm Bridget Sumner, Matthew's sister." "I'm so sorry. Georgina Hill told me I could find you here." Bridget cut me off as she fumbled with some papers inside her oversized handbag. "I'd like you to investigate my brother's death." I groaned inwardly. "May I offer you a cup of tea?" I asked. "No, I don't have time to stay. I'm on island to collect Matthew's body and take him back to Castlebar for burial." She drew a deep breath. I should tell you that I believe neither the coroner's report nor the guard's assessment of what happened. Georgina said you help people with these kinds of things. I hoped you'd agree to meet with me when you get back to Castlebar. Although I had to admit that I shared her skepticism of the police's conclusion, I felt myself flush with impatience. What was the authorities' analysis and final report? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Drugs. That's what I heard on my visits to the shop for groceries. But I didn't have the heart to say that to the distraught woman standing in front of me. Bridget smoothed the sleeves of her sweater as if trying to soothe herself. They said he drowned and had trace amounts of cocaine in his system. It's their opinion that Matthew's death had the look of a drug user who fell from the cliffs. Did they tell you how they reached this conclusion? What did the coroner's report say? An initial toxicology screen reported a trace amount of cocaine. That's crazy. Matthew didn't use drugs. I begged them to investigate further, but they said it wasn't necessary. Her hands rubbed her sleeves again. I'm so sorry. It's never easy to accept the police's opinion, or anyone else's for that matter, about a family member. I touched her arm to show some kind of support. Let me think about this. I may be returning to the States in the next few days. I'll contact you when I get back to Castle Bar. Bridget's face hardened as she nodded in understanding. Fine. Well, thank you, Miss O'Brien. She held her head high as she turned on her heel and strode off. I'm a researcher and information broker. My profession involves me looking into people's lives and sometimes disappearances and deaths. But we're talking long after the fact here. Fresh murders, however, are another story. The consulting detective, that's the name of my company, primarily researches lost birth certificates and marriage licenses. More than that, I sometimes find missing information about property and financial accounts so a will or an estate can be finalized. My work is accomplished by spending long hours scouring through public records, microfiche, obscure online databases, and so on. My business began in my junior year at college when I tried to find my mother. After paying a company who made big promises but delivered little more than her name and the address we'd lived at before my sojourns in a series of foster homes, I started an information brokerage of my own. Having access to data that most people don't has placed me at the heart of the mystery more times than I care to count. Private detectives and attorneys contact me on a regular basis. They usually want me to research documents and data related to divorce, adoption, family reunions, and missing heirs to estates and wills. Sometimes a family wants to make discreet inquiries, not wanting the particular relative to know that the family has initiated a search about the status of a long-lost relative. Isn't it ironic? Here I am digging into other people's lives, figuring out their personalities, getting into the heads of the missing, thinking about what drove them away from their families, and still, I haven't located my own mother. My only solace in this quest is that I'm becoming better at what I do. I know I'll find her eventually. But it's a mistake to label me as a private investigator. While occasionally my research points the way to a murder, I am most definitely no Miss Marple. My name is Star O'Brien. I'm a Yank, as the Irish say, temporarily living in Ireland for a couple of reasons. The first is the ongoing search for my mother, and the second is because my significant other, Dylan Hill, recently died of a massive heart attack. The attending cardiologist called it a widowmaker. I prefer to think of it as a dark, silent loss. I was left with his half of our joint assets and all of his remaining estate in his will. You can imagine my surprise that his estate included French Hill Cottage, Castle Bar, County Mayo, We'd known each other for 6 years and lived together for half that time, and he never once mentioned an Irish address. Was it a secret or an oversight? I don't know, but I mean to find out, because some secrets I have found live parallel and undiscovered lives.